I am of the opinion that nothing can do more to dissolve everything that man has done to progress socially and technologically than the mainstream libertarian left wing of the modern age. Now, of course, not all who are on the lib-left quadrant of the simple political spectrum advocate for what I'm about to say, but I have seen enough to do so to the point where I had to say something about it. This is also not counting purely working-class issue-oriented libertarian left-wingers such as the Zapatistas down in Mexico, for example. By libertarian left in this sense, I am speaking of those that are more so the first world Antifa and the woke types. So what I'm about to do is envision a future as to where these people actually somehow attained power and put their ideas into practice. Point 1. Modern libertarian leftist ideology is unsustainable to civilization. Most of these first-world libertarian leftists have no care at all for the concepts of nations or borders. They despise traditions and cultural heritage, law enforcement is demonized, and criminality excused. The only function that they believe the state should have is to hand out welfare and protect every hedonistic vice that they can think of. Mediocrity is excused and people are able to advance through affirmative action programs despite not being qualified for the position they are attaining. When you don't have borders, you don't have a nation. The abolition of borders and the allowance of free movements of people through what should be your territory is the end of any nation's sovereignty. There would be no nation or country, only a territory. Furthermore, the abolition or discouragement of traditions and cultural heritage would shed the unity of the population, further eroding the concept of nationhood. The people living there would not be citizens of a country or a nation-state, but squatters on a piece of land. Not that the liberal left sees any problem with this, given how, to them, nations are just a piece of land anyhow and nothing more. Criminal behavior and drug addiction would run rampant as the police are defunded or outright abolished, and the state is diminished to a caretaker role with little authority outside of welfare. There would be no standing army. Instead, there would be roving bands of Antifa militia with little oversight from the new authority, from the new diminished state and criminal gangs that would benefit from the collapse of law and order. How the new government would actually assert its authority when their entire ideology revolves around the absence of authority, I cannot say. They would just have to hope that nobody else comes along with their own bigger militia and takes over the anarchic government. This is why a government ran by the type who shout "no gods, no masters" at the top of their lungs would not function. Either they would have to completely betray everything they claim to stand for and consolidate their rule by brutally crushing their opposition with the formation of a standing army or police force, or they would sit by and do nothing as everything falls apart around them. In the case that they do decide for the sake of survival to betray their principles and form a standing army and police force made up of their militias, it would be a force to tear down the pillars of civilization. Political opposition would be stamped out, but anyone who could do whatever they want. It would be the true anarcho-tyranny. There would be no laws enforced upon the actual criminal elements in society, but against those who would seek for a restoration of society as it was before the revolution. Society itself would be rotting under the rate of degeneracy that is protected and enforced by the state. Alcoholism, drug addiction, pornography, sexual fetishism, petty crime, and many other societal ills will be ignored until everywhere in America looks like the needle and feces-littered streets of San Francisco. Point 2. Libertarian leftism breaks the bonds that hold a nation's people together. The modern libertarian left is against religion, tradition, the family, and nationhood in general, all of which is required to hold a people together. Of course, there is a reason for this. Many of these pillars failed them, so they should have no reason for these pillars to succeed. However, on a large scale, should all of these pillars fall, it would prove catastrophic. The nation isn't held together by just the state alone. It is held together by the strong social bonds that exist within it. So let us say the new libertarian left state succeeds in abolishing religion. Places of worship are closed and public worship is no longer allowed. Either they do this by heavy taxation or religious institutions, or the militias just outright force places of worship to shut down, because nobody is going to just voluntarily give up their faith. As someone who's not really religious myself, I nevertheless recognize that religion is important for society. Religious communities create standards and are very close-knit. In a way, they are sort of like families. The breakup of these communities would, assuming a giant uprising from these communities would immediately occur, erode the bonds between the people. Now, I'm not saying that you need religion to have standards for a healthy society, but at the same time, many standards for a healthy society originate from religion. Concepts like modesty, respecting one's parents and elders, self-help, charity for the less fortunate, and many more are reinforced by religious belief. Take that away, and unless there is some form of standard, you have people acting solely for their own self-interest and nothing else. This would be furthered by the erosion of the family. Family is yet another important social bond in a healthy society. It is commonly known that many people who have problems have them because of problems in the family, whether it be by abuse, absent fathers, uncaring mothers, divorce, among other things. Yet instead of trying to actually fix these problems, the lib-left's conclusion seems to have been that the problem lies with the concept of the family itself. This is why, as we have seen many times, the libertarian left has tried to erode the concept of the family. You see people cutting family off all the time for political disagreements. This happens more with the left than with the right. As someone who is on the right myself, I could not imagine cutting off any member of my family due to a political disagreement, even if what they were arguing was a threat to my existence. Yet because those who adhere to libertarian left politics have come to the conclusion that anyone arguing against them is a threat to their very existence, they have an easier time doing this. So let us go back to our hypothetical future. The concept of the family as we know it today is discouraged by the new state. The only way you are tied to your family is because you have been birthed from your mother. Other than that, nothing. There are no family codes, no rules regarding restrictions on children, no marriage, no legal bindings on any property family related. Other than being blood related, you are just like any other stranger you see on the street. So with all of these social bonds gone, in the name of progress, what reason would anyone have to maintain the concept of civilization or nationhood at all? Who do you identify with? You can't identify with your nation because that is gone. You can't identify with your religion because it was abolished. You can't identify with your family because the concept of the family doesn't matter. And you can't identify with your race because racial identity is outlawed. I suppose you could identify with your class, since class warfare is a major talking point among the libertarian left, but what would be the point considering the new society has seized the wealth of the rich and redistributed it among everyone? The only thing you'd be able to identify with is yourself. There is no being a part of something greater. You live your life and it sucks, and if it sucks, then it's too bad for you. You get no support pillars to lean upon, because according to the new libertarian left state, those pillars were the root of all social ills. This leads me into my next point. Point 3. A libertarian left society would end technological advancement as we know it. Given that we have established that there is now no incentive to fight for anything under the new state, we come to the inevitable conclusion that people will simply just stop working altogether. What is the point of working if there's no incentive to work? It isn't like you are working for the betterment of your family, community, or nation. The only real work that people would have incentive to undertake is agriculture, because despite everything, food is still a necessity. With this would come a halt in technological progress, because as much as these people claim to care about science, they don't understand that the tools necessary for scientists to do their work would still need to be manufactured by people with the incentive to do so. Bear in mind that I'm not some capitalist absolutist. I've never actually heard from any of these people how anyone would be incentivized to do anything other than the vague notion that people will just do it for the betterment of humanity. Like everyone will just come around the fire and sing songs while finally realizing that their entire way of life before the revolution was wrong, and they will happily work for just the heck of it. Sure, maybe that might happen for the first few weeks, but sooner or later, as people realize they are working for little to no reward, with no downsides to being unemployed, things are going to start breaking down very quickly. Heck, at some point, even the state itself will wither away as they realize that their entire purpose is meaningless given that there are no more reasons for the concept of the state to exist. With all of this in mind, it is easy to see why the modern-day libertarian left is the most absurd political movement in history. Authority, incentives for labor, and social bonds are needed for a civilization to thrive and progress. Take those away and we enter a modern-day dark age where humanity lacks direction and purpose. This would be an era of freedom and indulgence, the likes of which have never been seen before, to the point where it becomes dull. An era where nobody has any purpose in life, where morality is gone, and where everything is just rotting away. Thank you for listening. Please tell me what you think in the comments below.